It's a battle of the aluminum-clad smartphones in this quick look. It's Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And this is the Apple iPhone 5S versus the HTC One. We have two different aluminum-clad phones in this edition, as the HTC One took on the metal body to bring something a little different compared to most other smartphone offerings. The HTC One takes on a somewhat similar body to the 5S, but has a much more rounded back that can make it rock back and forth when lying on a table. With a 4.7-inch screen, it isn't all that difficult to handle in one hand, though the front-facing speakers add some girth at the top and bottom. The power button is up top of the HTC as well, though it has capacitive keys up front for back and home. Apple's iPhone 5S is also aluminum clad and takes on a flatter look with rounded corners. Its smaller 4-inch screen gives it a much easier to handle body in one hand. Its design is very much like the previous iPhone 5 in look, feel, and button layout, though the home button up front is no longer concave and houses a fingerprint reader. Even though the HTC One is comparably an easier to handle phone than most of the 5-inch screen devices out there, it's hard not to notice how easy the iPhone 5S is in the hand. The screens are a big reason for these phone sizes. The HTC One brings the 4.7-inch screen, and this Super LCD does its 1080p resolution good justice. Though its interface does take on darker tones, the colors are represented well, and everything else is actually still enjoyable to view. The iPhone 5S, on the other hand, continues the Retina display tradition, and its 1136 by 640 resolution display does handle the now more colorful iOS 7 very well. The smaller screen might not do justice to people who want a much bigger display experience, but if that isn't an issue for you, the iPhone 5S still provides a very good display experience. While the HTC One works with the Snapdragon 600 clocked in at 1.7 GHz, the 5S introduces a 64-bit capable dual-core A7 processor, and 64-bit is a term we will likely end up seeing a lot in the upcoming year. Both of these phones are very fast, especially considering the demands of their respective ecosystems, and in usage it's not hard to appreciate how fast both these phones go through their various elements. Hardware offerings actually take on a pretty similar situation in both phones, as the aluminum unibody designs keep either phone from having expandable storage or removable batteries. The HTC One does have a much larger battery at 2300 mAh over the 1570 mAh units in the iPhone 5S, but with different power demands in either phone, your usage habits will ultimately dictate the longevity. The HTC One takes on a bit more drastic of a change in its camera, as HTC bucked the high megapixel trend and focused on making the 4 ultra pixels as high quality as possible. The app doesn't come with too many features, but includes HTC Zoe for consolidating your memories. Lesser overall features describes the camera in the iPhone 5S as well, which doesn't get a huge boost in its 8 megapixel optics, but does get an overhauled app interface. While it does get very attractive design and transition elements between its modes, the main additions include slow-motion video capture and a square mode, pretty obviously made for Instagram. We'll have a more in-depth comparison of the cameras and their picture quality soon. Finally, in software, we see somewhat of an overhaul in both operating systems, as iOS 7 has been given a flatter look that employs translucent effects. It's a very nice and welcome change for an OS that was starting to show its age. It's easy to use, and it's also easy on the eyes, as additions like the Control Center and the updated notification dropdown do help bring the most used functions into easy access areas. Overall, however, it's the same general experience that anyone with even a passing knowledge of iOS can find familiar. Sense on the HTC One, on the other hand, did get its own overhaul by polishing up the general Android experience while adding in a new home screen in the form of Blink Feed. This is a tiled screen that consolidates the various news and social media feeds you may have in a nice way. And of course, the more classic Android experience is always a single swipe away. Both do well to update what we've already been accustomed to seeing. It's just important to remember that, as with everything, the new can eventually fade, and in the end these experiences are essentially what we already know. And so, there you have it. The aluminum body is one that is generally well received, and both of these phones sport them well. The 5S is definitely an update worth its salt, but even people with a passing knowledge of Apple's smartphones will find this the classic experience, just with some new layers up top. But the same can be mentioned about the HTC One, though its design elements were definitely considered a more jarring change in the Android space. Nonetheless, both are great examples of their respective ecosystems, and so if you want that metal form factor, these two are probably the best available. We'll have a more in-depth comparison coming soon, so stay tuned to Android Authority, because we're your source for all things Android.